Say you're a young lady in the Regency era ready to find a romance. Exactly how does that work? What was courtship like in the Regency era, and what were the important stages of it? Was it different from modern dating? Well, that's what we're going to be delving into here in today's video. My name is Ellie Dashwood, and this is my channel where we talk about history and literature. If you like either of those things, please subscribe. Regency romance. This is a very popular topic. There's an entire subgenre of romance novels about this time period. But what is so fascinating about courtship in the Regency is that it's kind of like our modern dating, but at the same exact time, it's nothing like our modern dating. Of course, both of them are similar in that they are that era of life where a young couple meets, falls in love, gets to know each other, decides to get married. However, the way that Regency culture did this is significantly different than most cultures do today. So this means modern readers reading the works of Jane Austen can often bring a lot of preconceptions about romantic relationships to the stories that actually end up confusing them. Sometimes they read into things in the book or don't understand things in the books because it's so different from modern dating. For example, this would be like sports. I know, normally we don't talk about sports on this channel, but say you are a soccer fan, or as the rest of the world calls it, football, and you love soccer and you're like, oh, this makes so much sense. You know all the rules. But then you start watching American football and you're like, I'm confused because in some ways it's similar. There's a big field. There's two teams. There's a ball. But they pick it up with their hands and they run into each other. What is happening? And that, my friends, is because it's a different game with some similarities, but very important underlying differences. Likewise, when we are looking at Regency era courtship versus modern dating, there are some pretty obvious similarities, but the underlying differences are really foundational and so important to understand. Otherwise, things get confusing real fast. So in order to help us understand this better, this is the first in a series of videos where we're going to be talking about the courtship process. Here we're going into some of the big underlying concepts, big picture stuff, and we're going to go into the finer details in other videos. But first, for us all to be on the same page, let us look at the most basic definition of courtship in the Regency era. So if you were in the Regency era and you looked up courtship in the dictionary, guess what definition you would have found? Making love to a woman. That, my friends, is the essence of courtship. Now, of course, making love in the time period did not mean sleeping together. Rather, it meant just having romantic attentions towards, amorous addresses, hitting on them, wooing, that whole thing. So, for example, when Mr. Collins is at the Netherfield ball and he tells Elizabeth that his chief object was by delicate attentions to recommend himself to her, and that he should therefore make a point of remaining close to her the whole evening, that was Mr. Collins making love to Elizabeth. Or, for example, when Mr. Darcy decided to tell her, my feelings will not be repressed. You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you. That, my friends, was Mr. Darcy making love to Elizabeth. And in both of these examples, we see one-sided lovemaking, right? The guy is in love with Elizabeth. Elizabeth does not return the affections. However, the Regency era would have still looked at these guys as her lovers because loving someone was a one-sided affair. So, for example, in our modern language, we still have this idea. If someone says, I am a lover of chocolate, we understand that that person loves chocolate. The chocolate does not necessarily love them back. And that was the same thing in the Regency era. Someone could love someone, right? You're like, I love you. Thereby, you are that person's lover, no matter how they feel about you, because you are doing the activity of loving them. Now, of course, if the person did love you back, as we know eventually Elizabeth does love Darcy back at the end of the story, now they are mutual lovers, right? She is a lover of him, he's a lover of her. Together they can love each other. But it did not have to be mutual. You know what else is interesting about this definition, though? So if we go back to the sentence of making love to a woman, we see that it's inherently from the male suitor perspective. He is the subject of this sentence, doing the verb to the object, which is the woman of his dreams, right? And that was really how it was seen. A man courted a woman did not court a man. She was rather the object of his attentions and his affections and his aspirations for her hand. Now, she could encourage his efforts or she could discourage his efforts. But what she could not do is go out and have her own efforts, right? She can't be like, that guy's cute. I'm going to start calling on him and then ask him to dance and then show him I'm into him. That is not the Regency era perspective on this. Rather, courtship was really a male endeavor and was almost defined through male behavior, as we see throughout the stages of a Regency era courtship, which we should talk about now. The stages of a Regency era courtship. There were 3 main phases, all defined by the male behavior. Because again, he is the one doing the activity of courting. His actions are the ones that define and drive and create this courtship. She is simply responding to what he does. So the 3 stages are, first of all, pleasing attentions. Second, particular attentions. And third, engaged attentions. But before we get into that, here is a word from this video's sponsor. So Ducksomnium makes the most beautiful board games for history lovers. I love them so much. Whether you're a Victorian botanist or a Rococo party thrower, or in their latest game, a Jane Austen heroine on the search for romance. So in their latest game, Endearment, you and your friends take on the roles of Jane Austen heroines, working through different chapters and settings, going to places like theaters and gardens and libraries, all to meet up with different friends and suitors, collect dresses, and ultimately try to marry your perfect match. But you need to be on your guard, and you need wit and wisdom, because another Jane Austen heroine might just actually end up stealing your perfect match. That's right, if you're Elizabeth Bennet, you won't necessarily end up with Mr. Darcy unless you're really on top of your game. What I really love about Ducksomnium games is they are gorgeous, and this one is filled with so much classic art that it really transports me back to the Regency era. They use heirloom materials, so it's also tactily great. I love the little wood pieces and stuff. And then too, it makes me think. I have to be like, what is my strategy? How will I end up with Mr. Darcy by the end of this? So they are just this great mix of intelligence and beauty while still being so fun to play. So if you want to take on the role of a Jane Austen heroine and match with your perfect match, then definitely check out Endearment. Click on the link in the description below or go to ducksomnium.com to shop the game today. Now, back to the video. Welcome to A Young Gentleman's Guide to How to Win a Lady's Heart. Step 1. Be introduced to her. An introduction into a young lady's acquaintance was a very important and essential step. If you remember my whole video on Regency era introductions, a young lady's acquaintance was highly guarded by her friends and family. So a young man who wanted to be able to show her his love had to make sure to get into that circle first. And of course, you would do this through mutual friends. Perhaps you already have an introduction. Whatever the case, once you got introduced to her, you were kind of automatically in this first phase of pleasing attentions because you were now a man of her acquaintance. In modern terms, we would think of this phase as being friends, though of course a well-bred gentleman in the Regency era treated his female friends a little bit differently than guys do today. And for example, a gentleman friend would ask you to dance at the ball and compliment your dress and take a turn with you in the garden and give you all of these sort of pleasing attentions as just a matter of course. And basically that's why this phase is called pleasing attentions. He's just giving the girl the basic pleasing attentions he would to any female friend. But this phase was very important because all of these attentions gave him an excuse to interact with her and get to know her better and really decide, like, is this a girl I'm interested in? Do I like her that much? What's her character like? How does she feel about me? Like, when I ask her to dance at the ball, is she like super into it? Or is she just like, okay, you know? It gave him time to really decide how interested he was in her, while also giving him an excuse to go walk in the garden with her. Now, of course, if a gentleman decides, hey, I like her, I'm an admirer of her, but also she's not the one for me for some reason, he can stay in this pleasing attentions phase forever. And I think a great example of that in Pride and Prejudice is, of course, Colonel Fitzwilliam. He definitely admires Lizzie, but she's just not rich enough to tempt him. But let's look at some of the ways he treats Lizzie in this pleasing attentions phase of life. The book says, Colonel Fitzwilliam seemed really glad to see them. Anything was a welcome relief to him at Rosings, and Mrs. Collins' pretty friend had moreover caught his fancy very much. He was now seated himself by her, and talked so agreeably of Kent and Hertfordshire, of travelling and staying at home, of new books and music, that Elizabeth had never been half so well entertained in that room before, and they conversed with so much spirit and flow as to draw the attention of Lady Catherine herself, as well as Mr. Darcy. Later, when coffee was over, Colonel Fitzwilliam reminded Elizabeth of having promised to play to him, and she sat down directly to the instrument. He drew a chair near her. So there we really see Colonel Fitzwilliam talking to her, drawing a chair near her, wanting to hear her play the piano, admiring her beauty, but he's also not seriously interested in actually, However, he is just this gentleman of her acquaintance, eternally stuck in pleasing attentions. I'm sure if there was a ball, he'd ask her to dance, but will he be ever asking her to marry him? No. Now, of course, if a gentleman went through the pleasing attentions phase and was like, you know what, this is a girl that I am seriously interested in, I'm ready for the next level, then he would embark on stage 2, called particular attentions. This is the phase when he would start paying her extra special attention. As author Lawrence Stern put it, the courtship of an English gentleman was a course of small, quiet attentions, not so pointed as to alarm, nor so vague as to be misunderstood, with now and then a look of kindness, and little or nothing said upon it. So again, we really see male courtship being defined by their actions, their attentions, their behaviors, as opposed to spoken words. So this wasn't an era where a guy asked a girl to go steady with him. Rather, he just started acting in a particular way. And in this phase of the courtship process, he would just start paying her extra special attention, right? This is above and beyond just friendship zone. He's singling her out for things. He is just paying her so much attention that, as this quote says, it cannot be misunderstood. And so not only would these extra special attentions be noticed by the young lady herself, they would be noticed by her friends and family. So for example, we see Lizzie comment on the way that Bingley treated her sister thusly. I never saw a more promising inclination. He was growing quite inattentive to other people and wholly engrossed by her. Every time they met, it was more decided and remarkable. At his own ball, he offended 2 or 3 young ladies by not asking them to dance, and I spoke to him twice myself without receiving an answer. Could there be finer symptoms? Is not general incivility the very essence of love? So it's really the way that Bingley is behaving around Jane, and in this case, even ignoring other young ladies, that are so remarked on, not just by Elizabeth, obviously by Mrs. Bennet, by Sir William, and so many others, that it was accepted, like, okay, he is in this phase. He must have honorable intentions and be leaning towards marrying her. And this is why a gentleman really, really, really needs to think through his conduct before going from pleasing attentions into particular attentions. Because in pleasing attentions, like, he is just in the friend zone when he's gentlemanly to her. Nobody thinks anything of it because that's what all gentlemen should be like in this time period. But when he really starts singling her out, showing her extra special attention, sending a lot of romantic signals, then generally it was viewed as he was leaning towards marrying her. This is a serious thing. And he actually starts putting his own reputation and his honor on the line. I think in our modern era, people are usually much more concerned with someone being a man of their word, right? So like if a guy promises something, he should follow through. We're in the Regency era, a man's actions could serve as a promise in and of themselves, right? So society is like, be a man of your actions, right? Like, don't behave a certain way and then act like, oh, I didn't act that way. That was pretty much the Regency era's viewpoint of it. Now, of course, this could go from Mr. Bingley level, where Elizabeth says of his conduct that it exposed him to the center of the world for caprice and instability. So here Lizzie is like, Bingley's reputation took kind of a hit. He's unstable, and everybody knows it. Which takes us to the stage 3 of a courtship, which is engaged attentions. Basically, you get engaged by the guy proposes marriage, and then if he's accepted, you are now in this phase. So much to be said about this phase. I'm going to save all of that for a future video, but it is at this point that a couple is now finally all on the same page. The guy has declared his affections and his attentions. Everyone now knows that they are 100% officially a couple, and yeah, they can start planning their wedding. But basically, what was Regency era courtship like? Well, it was a male-dominated activity where he would pay her special attention and she would either encourage that or discourage it. And then, if they got far enough in, he would propose marriage. And that, my friends, is Regency era courtship 101. But definitely subscribe because this is a general overview of courtship in the Regency era, but we're going to go more in depth on different topics in future videos. And let me know in the comments down below, guys, what do you think of Regency courtship? Do you think you would have enjoyed the system, or do you like modern dating better? And also, special shout out to all of my awesome channel members. Hi! And as always, guys, keep being awesome, because you're awesome. Bye!